Good morning. Welcome to this session on the basics. My name is Jurcso and I'm from CERN. We are operating the largest physics research infrastructure of the world, which based on the maintenance perspective on Hexagon EAM for the last, I can say, 40 years. And this morning, I would like to really speak about the basics, because everybody wants to have the big things. I would like to have AI, I would like to have prescriptive maintenance, I would like to have everything automated. I want to know when the thing will start to break before it breaks and I can fix it without unplanned downtime. But all these things are relying on data and relying on good data. So the dream is the zero unplanned downtime. Everybody wants to have everything. But this is a journey, and it's not an easy one. And we can use the famous Chinese quote on it that even a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This is what we have to do, because the road to advanced EAM usage, it starts with and impossible without the correct work order data. It sounds extremely simple, but you all know that in the reality this is extremely difficult. So let's have a look what are the elements and what we can do to make it better. The first thing that we are trying to maintain a digital thread where the data is key. You have all large installations. It could be a power generation. It could be the water system of a whole city. It could be a large scientific installation. But all these things are having very, very, very long life cycles. We are speaking about 10s, 50, or even 100 years. So you have long life cycles where you would like to keep data, and you would like to know that when you have, for example, a water pipe which was originally installed in 1910, maybe it will be necessary to replace it in the coming future. We also know that software is changing. In the audience, I have some of the doyens of this domain who lived her whole life with these softwares. Name changed, functionality changed, but the data is the same. And even today, all of you know, when you open up the physical tables underneath Hexagon EAM in 2025, you will have a data structure which is dated back to the 1980s, which is an amazing thing because it shows how well that thing was designed over 40 years ago. So these things are very, very important to maintain these things and have the information and cover the whole life cycle of the equipment from the original idea until the disposal. And when we are thinking on this, we shouldn't forget that a very large part of this data is work order data. And if this data is not correct, we cannot really use the rest. The first thing for me, when I'm speaking about data, I want to know who entered the data. I want to know the source, and I want to trust the source. Because I don't know who put the information there, it raises question marks, it raises concerns. Would you imagine that you take your car, you have no indicator for the level of the gas what you have in, and somebody just put in a post-it, you are going to go for 5,000 miles. But you don't know who put the deposit in. Will you believe it? Probably not. But if it says you still have 50 miles, filled up the car dead in the corner, that already gives some information, some source, and some authenticity where this information is coming from. Because you trust that you're dead sure you want to get to the petrol station and ensure that you can get home at the end of the day. So this is why I always praying that we need dedicated user accounts. everybody has the memories that when at the home it was still a single phone with a single phone number. Then in the modern times when the family had an email address. But I'm sure if I look around, at least everybody has one email address and at least one phone number, which is really specific to a person. So I like to trust the users, and this is why how we are working with our contractors, they get access to our EAM system, and they can enter the data. We trust them, and it also gives a respect. You remember this ancient structure when the archaeologists find some carvings and the hidden side of the walls, where it's the initials of the masons was carved in to make them proud that this was the work what they done. This is also very important for any technician on the field, that this is what I done to my best of my knowledge. In EAM, we have this duality. We have users and we have employees. But from our practical experience, it's the best to connect the two worlds together. Because when everybody has an account and logs in the background, it's an employee with additional information. It could be trades, it could be qualifications, it could be access rights or signature rights. So the two things live together and should be connected together. When we have dedicated users, we can rely on lots of auto-completed data, which is coming right away from the system. And we can fill out data additionally based on the information that we are having the user. Also, we need this connection of the employee and the user to ensure that we have proper connection and proper assignation of the work orders, that the assigned to is corresponding to a real person. And of course, when we have this data in, we have the accountability. And this is also a point which is very crucial for us, and I'm sure for most of the installation, the audit functionality of the EAM. In these days, the data, the storage is unlimited. So it absolutely makes sense to audit all the possible fields that could be changed by the user, not just to trace back when something not how it should be, but also as an insurance policy. Somebody can make a mistake, and you can still look it back what was the previous value of that field. And this is especially important in regions in EAM where you have no further controls, like in the case of the custom fields. You have no way to select which one is protected, which one is not protected. So the best way to have the safe information when you audit every change affecting custom fields. And of course, not everybody needs the same kind of account. Somebody needs a full site. Somebody only needs a light user because the only screen that they ever access is the work order screen. Some people need no desktop access, they just need a mobile. But all these things are specific for the user needs. And I also agree, these are not free. So it requires usually some administration because contractors coming and going, employees are leaving. So the old account should be deactivated and kept in the system, and the new user should be activated for a new person who arrived to keep the history and continue the good data. The next element is really where the data quality is coming from the work order is at the creation. Because we have lots of information, and those information should be already right from the beginning. When we are speaking about the equipment, the description of the work order types, when we have a plentitude of work order types, the departments, the initial status, so it's something already released or it will need additional approvals before it can be executed. And all these things are providing enormous amount of useful information on a work order, and I've just been spoken about the mandatory fields if the data is correct. So, the good initial data is the responsibility of the creator of the work order. And that connects to additional information. We are speaking about the equipment. It's very simple, selecting an equipment, mandatory, done. But that we have additional master data on the equipment that can help enormously for the execution of the work order. It's the proper information, for example, on the department. Personally, I don't really like the word department in the EM word. I prefer to refer back a previous terminology when it was called the Maintenance Responsibility Center, the MRC. Because it's somebody's responsibility to do something with an equipment. And also the information on the location. We have plenty of elements which are going around on site. You have a motor which was one place, removed, repaired, and it will be installed somewhere else. So the information on the location is primordial to reduce intervention times. Also to have the proper information. And of course, you can have lots of additional things. You have classification for classes, categories, you have criticalities, you have risk. And all these things could be useful and can provide information which can be used afterwards from the work order. The description sounds trivial. We have 80 characters. You cannot write the War and Peace in that length. But you can provide information which will be significant and clear enough for a technician at the first look what to expect. I have to clean a window, or I have to replace a compressor. Just looking on the description. Also the work or type. It could be a preventive maintenance, it could be a breakdown, it could be a repair. We all have our classification of the different kind of work orders, but we have the two main family, those which have been generated from a PM schedule, and those which have been created in another way. And that's already a big classification. So all these things are building the base information what we have in a work order, and we have been just speaking about those which are mandatory on any work order. I already referred to the users as a very important source, and that also creates connection to lots of pre-filled information. It could be that already the logged-in user pre-fills the creator or the reporter of a work order. Also that automatically generate dates, usually today's dates. And based on the information, you can propagate other elements, like if you have the user who logged in, you can potentially propagate what will be the trade of that work based on the employee information already known in the database. But this is only possible when we have the properly named users. The next level of the information in the work order are the dates. The dates seem trivial, but they are absolutely crucial. If we don't have the correct dates, we cannot do anything related to reliability or performance. If you think on the simplest calculations, you need the proper date. And in our experience, the most important dates are the reported date, when something really happened, especially if you are speaking about something unplanned, because that shows the moment when something is started to burn. And then you have the dates of the real execution, when something really started on it, and it was declared that now it's finished and it's good again. These three dates, together with the mandatory information of the work order, can provide a very, very, very large chunk of all the indicators and all the insights what you need. I also put up the classic bracketing of the dates, just as a reminder that usually you have the requested date outside somewhere, and then you have the period of the requested dates when something could be executed, the scheduled date, not to be mixed with something that's called planned, which is really the period when the work could be executed, and then the real time when the technician or the engineer really worked on the problem. We have those things. These are the mandatory elements, and from that I already can calculate an enormous quantity of different indicators without asking for any further additional data. The only thing what we need, that those things on the first two levels are correctly entered. It sounds easy. Who has a situation where all the work order data already in this level is correct in the organization? I don't see any hands. It's a magic? No. It's a very important thing to deal with it. Because if you have those, you can calculate all these elements already. You can even go towards reliability calculations without asking for any further data. So if I have to finish my talk here, this is the basic for the work orders, these two levels, and that will solve a large majority of the requests concerning advanced maintenance. But let's go further. For me, the absolute game changer is the codification of the closing codes. Because this is the moment when we can really separate the different kind of events, what has really happened. We have the different failure modes, and if we have the failure modes, then we have the domain of the advanced analysis, because we know that the different failure modes are affecting our equipment different ways, happening with a different regularity. So if we have this information, we can really go very, very, very advanced very quickly. We can run viable analysis, we can do much more sophisticated things, because we have codifications, codes, which could be treated automatically. In the EM, we have the 4 codes, the problem, the failure, the cause, and the action codes. This could be organized into practically decision trees that based on one or the other, you can have the different options available. And also you have 2 ways to have this information on the equipment. It could be some generic codes which are applying to all your equipment, or you can have codes which are specific for equipment classes. And if you have the specific codes for the equipment classes, again, this is when we are referring back to the very beginning, that the asset master data with the proper classification is an important source for the good work order data from the beginning. My favorite information, which is in many cases neglected, probably the only domain where everybody agrees this is important, those who are in transit, because for them the most important information when a vehicle is getting back to the base, what is on the counter. So the meter readings are very, very important source of supplementary information, and if you have the possibility, automate it. If you have a vehicle, you have all these vehicle management systems which are extracting the odometer of the car in real time, insert into the EAM. Use the web services, inject the information to ensure you are having it. If you don't have this possibility, just ensure that you are navigating to the right place in the work order, and with every work order, just enter the readings. It's probably 10 seconds for the technician. But this will be enormous information for you when you will start and look at analyzing the data. Of course, you will need this information when you would like to have PM schedules which are really use-based and not just time-based. You know the classic textbook example, what we are teaching for everybody who is first have a look on the PM schedules in the EAM, that I can have the time, my car needs a maintenance in a year, and I have a maintenance requirement which is every 10,000 miles. And if I don't have the 10,000 miles information, then I'm just relying on the calendar. And also, when you have counter information, meter readings against time information, you can have a much better idea about the usage of the equipment. Because it could be that something is just, say, sitting a large part of the year and used very sporadically as a reserve. Or you have equipment which are always running just on Friday afternoon. And all this kind of information can help in planning in a more advanced way the maintenance of all these equipment. The next level in my pyramid is the recording what has been done. Until now, I haven't really cared about what was really the work. I was happy with the information. It was done when, and it was okay. But the what was done, it's a very useful information if you have to look back what is going on with your equipment, or you see some interesting irregularities. Then you can look in the comments, where of course you are expecting specific information. But this information is very hard to process. We heard about large language models and how to teach these things. In my dreams, I would like to have a system when I have a work order without closing codes but comments, and LX can suggest, based on the comments, based on the history of the equipment, probably this would be the closing code for this work order. The other idea is we are having mobile phones with cameras, and we know the concept that a picture tells more than 1,000 words. Why not trust the technician? Just take a picture when they start to work, maybe even during, but at least at the end that they confirm it's done and it's working again. It's a very, very, very useful information, which doesn't require a large amount of extra work. And then we are capturing information with the comments. It could be that we have a conversation, that something is noted by the technician, the manager or the plant responsible sees this online, that something was entered on the work order, can put additional insight or even guiding the technician to ensure that the right things are done and it's properly working on that way that the problem will be solved very quickly. The next level, which is really for me a quantum leap, is the introduction of the activities. The activities are really allowing significantly more precise, structured data on a work order than anything before. You have information more on the employee. You know how many technicians will be needed to the work. It's something which could be done alone, or you need 2 or 3 people to do that. You know what kind of profession is needed to execute that kind of work. And also you can have an estimate that based on the history it will take a half a day, or this will take just 20 minutes. And this is already very important information because this could be used for comparison. Also, when you have the activities, you can have a more detailed description of the work, what needed to be done, even if you just think in a simple step that you need a dismantling, a repair, and the putting together of the equipment afterwards. And this opens additional fields where we can record information. With the activities, we can really add the data on who did what and when. You can have the possibility of the proper follow-up of the part usage, because you need an activity to be able to issue a part against it on a work order. And you can even add the nasty additional costs. Say you have a vehicle and you recognize that maybe you need a new certificate from the DMV, not just the refilling of the oil and changing the filters. The part usage, especially in large organizations, it's always a hassle. You have a lot of things. You have less and less money to have storekeepers who are ensuring that the things are going out only in the way how they should be. Because they say, okay, we don't need somebody who's just sitting there for a day because a technician will run in twice per day. So the self-service is getting more and more important. You see that even in a grocery store, even in a CVS in the corner, that's probably sometimes more difficult to find a cashier to talk to somebody instead of having the machines. And we are having this kind of approach for us when the technician is either released directly a part in the work order interface, or using a self-service kiosk where instead of the card where we are collecting points, scanning first the access card, then selecting the work order from those work orders which are assigned to that technician, and then scanning the code on the part, and it's done. The additional, I simply call it many times the cherry on the cake on the activities, are the checklist. From our experience, the checklists are the most important handholder for the technicians. It provides very, very structured information. It can guide through the activities what they have to do. And that could be very important for complicated tasks. For example, we have technicians who are verifying access control equipment, doors, gates, and they have work order which has the specific order of the physical route, how they have to go around the installation, starting from the main gate and getting back to the main gate, using the checklist, which is going through every equipment and everything that they have to do with those equipment on this maintenance route. And they don't have to think about what I have to do with the certain things. And in the past, they used papers, and when we had the transition for this service in 2018, then the responsible came a month later and put 3 folders of the height of roughly this on my desk, that this is what they saved in the last months. Not having paper and having all the issues, just have the tablet for the technicians with the steps on the work order recorded in the checklist. And of course, if you run into any problem, then you can mark that this needs a follow-up, you can add a comment. And while in the past, the responsible run to all the paper forms on the work, now they are just looking at a single grid report, which is highlighting the work orders, which are having checklist items which are not okay. And then concentrating only that work which really requires additional view on it. And we know that we have a lot of installations where the responsibility is crucial. It could be an electrical installation, it could be something in the food beverage domain or in the healthcare, when a work done by somebody and somebody else should sign it. And in the Hexagon EEM, you can electronically sign the checklist in the work order. And that should be enough to show that the work has been done and it was properly verified. And you don't need any additional form on the side, and you have the information on hand, digitally, right away available. For us, the big breakthrough for the checklist was the EM Lite. When we started these things, the digital works hasn't existed yet. So you had not a nice interface available for these things. But for us, this showed that this is the way to do it. And last year, we had roughly 1 million checklist item in our Hexagon EM system, which was filled out by technicians on the field. So this also led to the point that beside of checklist, we needed other ways to ensure that we can have the work order information properly filled out on the spot. And we can give this thing to the contractors with the limited set of functionality, what we really need. And this was really corresponding to the way that, as I had my example with the access control technicians, something which could become even easier than a piece of paper. Of course, when we have data, when we have quality, and we have quality issues, we have to live with it, but we shouldn't forget that this is something which will stay with us forever. Personally, I'm very convinced that it's significantly better if I have no data than I have something else. I'm sure you're running into plenty of situations when you have to fill out some forms to register for a website. The filling out is mandatory, and I'm quite sure that in many cases the entry will start QWERTY, as you just fiddle on the keyboard just to have something in, what is the minimum length to let me through and go to the next step. If you don't have the information, it's better than having the gibberish in. And that also relates to the problem that it's easy to pick the first thing. We had situations with different forms when it was related to treatment of waste. And after a certain period, the responsible notified us that he sees something very funny. A large chunk of the declared waste was aluminium. You know why? Because the aluminium was the first in the drop-down list. So that was the easiest choice. Select something, go to the next field, I don't care about the rest. So you have to be very careful when you have easy choices, that the information is really nice. Sometimes I wish that I could randomize the elements in the drop-down lists in EAM, just to ensure that the technician should first look before they make their selections. Also important that we are asking from the interveners to do something that's not part of their normal work. The normal work to take the screwdriver or fix something, but the normal work is not, okay, I would like to have a very nice written note what has happened. The mission is repair it, maintain it, lubricate it, but not, and please write 350 words about how the process went. Because usually, it's no time planned for the documentation. And this is what should be very crucial, and this should be taken into account when the work planning is coming, that when something is done, we should have the time for the documentation. Not just this is the minimum amount of time to tighten the screws, but then please add the additional 2, 3, 5 minutes to note down in which order I had to tighten those things. And if you are not having the dedicated time, you couldn't expect that this information will be provided. And if you have something simple, it doesn't a magic solution. It can still carry wrong data. So when I'm putting together my pyramid, I have to put in something extremely important to the very bottom, what I haven't mentioned until now, that all these things, all the information that we are collecting from the work order is depending on the dedicated individuals who are working on the field. If they are not doing their work, if they are not entering the right information, we will never ever have the data which is the basis of any advanced functionality. So you have to always think on the red line. And you have to respect these people. You have to provide training to them, not just throwing, okay, you can do it. Explain what they have to do and how they should do it. Collect the right data and only the data what you need. You don't want to know, for example, what was the temperature and the level of clouds when you are asking about to ensure that an outside equipment has a proper closure. And you have to record the information at the right place and the right time. If you can do the entering the information of the work order next to the machine, next to the equipment, instead of, okay, let's do this in the office where I have network because the extra $100 for a month, it's too expensive to have a Starlink on my pickup to record the information later. It can significantly degrade the quality of the information. And when you have these things together, the technicians will appreciate when regularly you are explaining how you can use this data, what they provided. Because this will be a reinforcement that the data, what they are adding on the top of their normal work, it's important for the organization and important for the improvements. So to have a very, very, very simple summary in just 3 points, all your indicators are as good as your underlying work order data. If the work order data is useless, all the things are useless afterwards. The work order data is always entered by real people. I'm not expecting in the coming 20 years when all technicians will be replaced by humanoid robots, but probably they will also fill out the work order information, but probably directly using the APIs instead of typing into an interface. And just remind yourself that if you take the very basic layers of the information in the work order, if that information is correct, you already have an enormous amount of crucial insights which can radically transform the way how your equipment managed and how the overall cost of your operation is. Thank you. Yes? Questions?